Hi everyone, this is Laura. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I have a layout that I made using the December My Creative Scrapbook limited edition kit. Pretty much every day I look at layouts on Pinterest and Instagram, and I try to find techniques that I would like to use. And I saw a number of layouts that had some strips of paper that were folded back and forth to create some dimension. So I thought I would try the same thing for this layout. I cut out some strips of lightweight white cardstock, and then I used my scoring board to score them at every 1/4 inch, and then I folded each strip of paper back and forth until I folded the entire strip, and then I did the same thing for 3 more strips of white paper, and then I repeated the same process for some strips of blue pattern paper that was in the kit. I needed a large circle to mount those folded pieces of paper on, so I used a plate because I didn't have any circle cutter that was big enough, and now I'm just carefully cutting around the pencil line that I drew. I'm going to put some adhesive all around the edge of this circle, and then I'm going to place these folded strips of paper on that adhesive to attach them down to the circle. I'm using the edge of the circle to line these folded strips of paper up with, because that way I will have a round circle. I was afraid if I tried to do this any other way without a guide, I wouldn't have a circle by the time that I was done. I hope that that makes sense. When I had to connect 2 strips, I layered the end of one on top of the end of the other, and then I continued on with pressing the strip down into the ATG adhesive. As I'm going along, I'm trying to make sure that the folds are at least somewhat consistent so that there won't be any areas where the folded strips are flattened out in one spot and then highly folded in another spot. And it's not perfect, but I thought that it looked good enough to continue on. After I had placed the white strips down, it was a lot easier to place these blue strips down. I wanted to place these on top of the white strips and leave a little bit of a white border around the edge. After I put some adhesive on the blue strips, I began layering it over the white strips. I was trying to line the edge of the blue strip up with the inner edge of the white strip and hoping that that would give me a consistent white border all around the outside. And putting the blue paper down is so much easier because it just fits really nicely and really easily into the folded white paper. After I was all done putting down that first strip of blue paper, I realized that I had forgotten to ink the outer edge of it, and I knew that I wouldn't be happy unless it was inked, so I had to pull that blue strip up again, ink the outer edge, and then I inked all 4 of the strips so that I wouldn't forget, and I put them all down the same way I put down the first strip. Now I'm going to be layering this really pretty pattern paper with stars all over it on top of a slightly larger white piece of cardstock, and then I'm going to mount both of those on top of the edge that I just created with the folded papers. I used a Creative Memories large circle cutter to cut out both of those circles. I used Distress Oxide ink in Stormy Sky to ink the edge of the blue paper. I thought that that color matched it perfectly. And then I used Distress ink in Vintage Photo to ink the outside of this larger circle. I attached the 2 circles together. And then I ran into the problem that the circles were sitting on top of an empty space and there was nothing to support the circle in the center. I had saved some pieces of cardboard packaging and cardboard scraps, and I thought that if I piled them in the center of the layout, that would give the circle I'm layering on top of the larger circle the support that it needed, and so that's what I decided to do. So I attached several cardboard rectangles together, and then I attach it down to the center of the circle. And if you're thinking that this seems like it might have made the layout heavy, it did make it a little bit heavy, but not as heavy as I thought it was going to be. I tested out that circle. It had support in the center, but it needed some support on either side, and I thought that the easiest solution would be to use some scraps of foam. So I had some scraps of yellow and black foam. I cut those to fit in those 2 spaces, and then I layered them on top of each other until they were even with the cardboard. And then finally, I was ready to attach the smaller circle down to the larger one. I put plenty of adhesive in the center and also around the edges so that the circle would be well attached to its base. So it took a little bit of time to make that circle, but I was really happy to try something different. I like to try new things. For the background, I'm using this beautiful pattern paper that is in the kit this month. I thought that it was perfect for a background paper because it has a lot of neutrals, but it also has the same green color that's in the pattern paper that I use for the center of the circle. And then I use the stencil that's in the kit this month as well with some modeling paste just to add a little bit of texture to the background. And the white modeling paste will help me keep the background neutral because I'm going to be adding a lot of embellishments on that circle. At first, I was thinking that I wanted to mainly put the modeling paste in the upper left-hand corner and the lower right-hand corner because, of course, the majority of this paper is going to be covered by that large circle. I wanted to put a little bit toward the bottom of the layout because, again, you'll be able to see the paper along the edges. Because the background is so light, I didn't think that I could overdo the modeling paste too much because the modeling paste added a nice amount of texture but not too much color. And I liked the way that it looked in both of those corners, and I extended the modeling paste in both of those corners quite a bit. And then I decided to go ahead and add some on the other two corners, not all the way to the corner, but a little bit so that there would be some in all four corners. Once I was done applying all the modeling paste, I put this piece of paper aside to dry. I didn't use my heat tool because I know that the modeling paste will dry fairly quickly and I didn't want to warp the paper. Pattern paper tends to warp a little bit more easily than mixed media paper, so since the modeling paste dries fairly quickly, I just allowed it to air dry. I ended up using almost every last scrap of this blue paper on the layouts that I made this month. So I didn't have a lot left, so I used small strips of paper to make a frame around the outside of a piece of white cardstock, and then I was able to mount my photo on top of that little frame. Here I have selected a number of ephemera bits and some fussy cut pieces that I'm going to be using on my layout. I also have some of the flowers I'm going to use in the upper left-hand corner. And since the majority of these pieces were pink, not all of them, but most of them, I used a pink Distress Oxide called Victorian Velvet to ink the edges. These banners had different colored sections, so I used some of the Stormy Sky Distress Oxide and some of the Distress ink in Vintage Photo to ink some of the sections that were different colors. Then I used the Vintage Photo for this little angel because I didn't think that the pink would show up on this piece. And then I used the same color for this cute little fussy cut Christmas tree that I'm going to try to incorporate into the layout. I have a little pile of cardstock in a drawer right near my working area, and I found this beautiful color of blue that I thought went really well with the blue that's in the pattern papers. So I thought that I would use this behind the entire layout as a mat or a border. I took the background piece that I put the modeling paste on and I trimmed a little bit off of each side. Then I inked the edges with the Distress ink. And you could see that I got the center of that piece of blue paper. I'm going to use that paper on another part of the layout in a little while. As I was putting adhesive on the back of the paper, I was thinking how beautiful the back of the paper is too. Sometimes it's hard to choose which side of paper to use when you have double-sided papers. I added a lot of adhesive to the back of this large circle, and then I carefully placed it in the center of the pattern paper, and I also wanted to make sure that the lines of stars were going horizontally across the page. My photo already has a white mat, and then it has that light blue mat that I added a little while ago. I also wanted to add this cardstock to the back of it. This is the same cardstock that I used to mat the entire layout on. I cut it to size, and then I attached my photo down to it. And then I attached the photo down to the center of the circle. I didn't put any foam on the back because I think there's enough dimension in the layout with the dimension that's in that large circle. Now all of the main elements are attached down, and I'm really happy about that because embellishing is my favorite part. I brought over that stack of fussy cut and ephemera pieces that I had planned to use on the layout, and I began tucking them all around the photo and the edge of the circle. I liked the way the banner looked at the bottom of the layout. I decided to place it a little bit off center so that it wouldn't look like everything on the page was centered. And then I began working on 2 flower clusters. I am going to use the Prima flowers that were included in the kit, and then these really beautiful little birdie gold poinsettias, and they all go together because the Prima flowers have a gold edge and a gold center. And I thought that these flowers were just stunning. To add a little bit to each of the clusters, I used some of the flowers that I fussy cut out of one of the pattern papers, and I tucked those all around the edge of both of the clusters. And that's one of the things that I love about Prima Marketing papers. There are always so many beautiful images to fussy cut from the pattern papers. And these fussy cut flower clusters were so pretty, and they were a nice light pink, so they didn't detract from the other flowers in the cluster, but they just gave a nice base to the clusters and helped to expand them a little bit. In the bottom left-hand corner, I'm going to include some fussy cut flowers along the edge of the circle. And then in the upper right-hand corner, I'm going to make a little mini cluster. I used an ephemera piece. It's a small ticket, and some of the fussy cut flowers. And then I'm also going to use one of the dimensional flowers as well, just to make that cluster look like it goes with the other 2 clusters. Now that I'm watching this video, I don't think that little tree looked too bad in the cluster at the top of the page, but I decided to put it instead on the left-hand side of the photo along with the little angel. I rearranged some of the ephemera that surrounds the photo. I had part of a piece of ephemera that looked like a ticket on the top and the bottom of the photo. I decided to remove the one that was at the top and replace it with a little sign that says Mary. And then I moved the piece that was on the bottom around to the left-hand side of the photo, and I layered it on top of another piece of ephemera that was there. And then under the photo, I had a sentiment that said Merry Christmas, but I decided to remove that from the layout. On the bottom of this Santa, who I fussy cut out from one of the pattern papers, there was a sentiment that said on the nice list, and I thought that was cuter than Merry Christmas. I like the idea that both of my girls were on the nice list, which I think that they are. And so I cut that off the bottom of the Santa, and then I replaced the Merry Christmas with that sentiment. I usually use gel medium to attach flowers down to my layouts. For some reason, I had it right there, but didn't think to use it. I used my gel glue instead, and that ended up holding those flowers in place very well. And then I began attaching down all of the elements that weren't already attached down to the page using ATG adhesive. I also wanted to add some photo corners, so I used my EK Success punch, and I punched out some photo corners. I put them in 3 of the 4 corners, even though you can't really see the one in the lower left-hand corner. Now I'm putting some of the gold letters that were included in the kit onto the banner to spell out the word Joyous, and it just happens that those letters fit perfectly on those sections of banner. And I love the way the gold letters go perfectly with those gold poinsettias. There's so many different colors of gold that sometimes the golds can look different, but these golds go together really nicely. I found a piece of glitter paper that was also a similar color gold. I used a Martha Stewart punch, and I punched out a whole bunch of little branches, and I'm tucking those branches in the 2 large clusters, and I add several to that small cluster on the top as well. I like the way this touch added the sparkly gold all around the cluster, so there was lots and lots of sparkle there. I wanted to add some pearls to the flowers. I love doing that. I used to add lots and lots of pearls, and then I was noticing on the Prima design team layouts, oftentimes there are only a couple of pearls, so I decided that I would cut back a little bit and just add a few. None of the pearls are particularly big, but I picked out a relatively larger one and put one of those on each of the off-white flowers, and then a couple of really small ones as well. And then I did the same thing with some pink pearls on the pink flowers. And Oftentimes on my layouts, I use self-adhesive half pearls. These are round pearls. These are actually spheres. And so sometimes they can roll away. So I like to get them attached down as soon as I place them on the flowers. And I like to use glossy accents to attach pearls down to the page. I think it's the best adhesive that I've used for keeping those pearls on the page long term. And then I used gel glue to attach those gold branches down. And then I gave the layout a little shake just to make sure that everything that's on there is attached down. I did use some self-adhesive half pearls on the page. I put some on the photo corners. I also put a very, very small one on the top of the little fussy cut Christmas tree by the angel. I added just a couple of the very tiny ones to each of those flowers that are on the layout. And then I also added the tiny pearls to the bottom of each section of the banner. That's the very last touch. This layout is complete, and here are some close-ups. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it. I really had a lot of fun trying something new and also working with this really gorgeous Christmas themed kit. If you take a look in the description box, you'll find a link to the My Creative Scrapbook website. You could check out all of the gorgeous kits that they have available. This is the limited edition kit. It's, I think, absolutely gorgeous. There's lots of other choices for different tastes in scrapbooking supplies. I hope that you have a fantastic holiday season, and whatever you celebrate at this time of year, I hope that you have a wonderful day and get to spend some time with family. Have a fantastic day, everybody. I'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.